Introduction to Natural Language Processing. So in this session, we're going to talk about what the natural language processing is, and we're going to go through some of the basics of natural language processing, including some basic use cases and also some basic techniques that are being used in order to analyze natural language through the use of machine learning. So natural language processing has many use cases, and here are some of them. We can obviously use NLP to classify text. We can also do things such as check the spelling of the grammar and the syntax, predict words. You can use it for information retrieval or information extraction, summarization, speech recognition, chatbots, and there are more applications of NLP coming out all the time. So here we're going to view some of the most basic ones. The main goal being to open your mind to the different uses of NLP. The most famous NLP application must be text classification. Text classification is just essentially supervised learning on text. That's all there is to it. The reason that we use the term text classification, however, instead of just supervised learning, is that a language is spatial as a domain. We'll explain later why language is spatial. It's a very difficult problem. So some of the techniques developed in order to classify text might not be encountered in other kinds of supervised learning. So some examples of text classification: detecting spam, obviously, extracting sentiment, the author of a document or the topics of a text. Pretty much anything that could be used to label a chunk of text. Yes, this can be used for text classification. So uClassify is demo for different text classification applications. If you go on that page, you're going to find different public classifiers for text. Actually, they work quite well, some of them, so it's not just a demo that can be used for real applications. So I'd suggest that you go on this page and try out some of those different classifiers yourself, just to get a feeling of the different ways that natural language processing can be used. And here is an example from uClassify, topic identification. So here I copied and pasted a chunk of text from a live broadcast of a football game in the Premier League. And you can see that the model correctly predicted with 96% probability that this document is talking about sports. So obviously you can try out different classifiers, not just the topic identification classifier, and you can try different chunks of text and see when the model performs well and when it does not. Sentiment analysis is probably the most popular application of text classification. So in sentiment analysis, the goal is to label a chunk of text, in this case Amazon reviews, as positive or negative. There are different ways to do it. The simplest one, which is depicted in this image, is to simply take phrases or single words and assign a positive or negative score to them and then add them up. Now, these days, however, we have even more complicated models which can also understand language better, and they can understand things such as how the context can actually influence the emotional content of a word or a phrase. Text summarization is another application of natural language processing. So in summarization, we care about reducing a large chunk of text into the core, the most important pieces. So why would we want to do that? Well, if we have many documents and they're all quite long, instead of reading 1,000 pages, it might be easier to read, let's say, 100 pages in order for us to get the main points that these documents want to convey. So there are various algorithms for text summarization, and if you go on this web page, you're going to find one such demo. And here I just found a random article from The Guardian in 2018, and I copied and pasted this in the summarizer, and this is what it came up with. This article is considerably shorter compared to the original article, and obviously you can play with different articles and see how well it performs. In this case, the algorithm achieved a compression of around 60%. Information retrieval is another application of NLP. And information retrieval is what the search engines are essentially doing. So you have a query and you want to match the keywords or the meaning of this query to a set of documents, where the documents can either be web pages or scientific papers. In the example of the image is coming from PubMed, a database of medical papers. But in the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You have a query, and the algorithm needs to match the keywords from the query to the different documents. So obviously, this is a super important application, given that this is essentially what Google is doing and many other websites or databases, like PubMed, for example. Information extraction is a task where we feed a bunch of documents into the algorithm, and then the algorithm comes up with some relations or knowledge chunks about the world. So, for example, the algorithm might read these pieces of text in this example and might understand that, yes, the second sign of the zodiac is Taurus. So it understands that, there's something called the signs of the zodiac, and the second of these is the Taurus. Or that strokes are a common cause of death in America. So a very useful application, because essentially in information extraction, it's a bit like we're trying to make algorithms understand language to the way we do. And finally, chatbots. Well, chatbots require no introduction. One of the most popular applications of NLP. Chatbots are not based only on natural language processing. There are many components that go into the creation of a chatbot, and there is really no standard way to build one. However, they do use, obviously, NLP for all sorts of things, from understanding to what the user wants to do to generating language.